ট্রাম কলকাতার সবুজের মধ্যে তা যেন এক ঝলক কবিতা, অন্তত আমার তাই মনে হতো। শব্দ করে না, ধোঁয়া ছাড়ে না, হাঁপ ছাড়ে না, কেবল গড়িয়ে চলে। ফেসবুকে কে যেন বেশ এই কথাগুলো লিখেও ছিলেন। তো সেই ট্রাম এখন আমাদের কাছে প্রায় স্মৃতি। সেই গড়িয়ে চলা দাদুর কাহিনী শোনার জন্য আগ্রহ নেই এই সময়ের হুড়োহুড়ির। আমি মেলবোর্ন শহরেও ট্রামে চড়েছি। ট্রামে চড়ে সারা শহর ঘুরেছিলাম, মনে আছে। তো এই কলকাতা এবং মেলবোর্ন, এই দুটো শহরকে এক করে দেওয়া হবে, বলা ভালো দুই ট্রাম যাত্রা মিলেমিশে যাবে, দুই শহরের ট্রাম যাত্রা মিলেমিশে যাবে। ব্রততী পরম্পরা ডিজিটাল নিউজের তরফ থেকে আয়োজন করা হয়েছে তেমনই একটি প্যানেল ডিসকাশনের। আপনারা সেই আলোচনায় অংশ নেবেন, সেই আলোচনা শুনবেন, সেই আলোচনা শোনা যাবে ব্রততী পরম্পরা ডিজিটাল নিউজের পাতা থেকে। হ্যাঁ, আবারও বলি, কলকাতা এবং মেলবোর্ন এই দুই শহরের ট্রাম যাত্রার কথা নিয়ে আলোচনা হবে, পরিবেশ বান্ধব এই ট্রাম যাত্রার কথা নিয়ে আলোচনা হবে এবং আলোচনায় উপস্থিত থাকবেন এই দুই শহরের বিশিষ্টজন। অতএব আপনারা অবশ্যই শুনবেন আমাদের এই অনুষ্ঠান, এই আলোচনা এবং আপনাদের মতামত জানাবেন। আলোচনাটি সম্প্রচারিত হবে ব্রততী পরম্পরা ডিজিটাল নিউজের পেজ থেকে। নমস্কার।
Namaskar, I am Orpita Bhattacharjee from Brototi Parampara Digital News. We are very happy to welcome all our panelists and viewers to this interesting panel discussion on TRAM Twin Cities, Kolkata and Melbourne unite to make trams more relevant. Please stay with us and let us hear and try to resolve and get some solutions to the problems which trams in Kolkata are now facing, and let us take to the next generation a better, more efficient, and happy tram times.
All right, Paloache. My name's Roberto D'Andrea, and I've been involved in the Melbourne-Kolkata Tramway Friendship Tram Jatra for the 30 years. As the theme is a tram twin city theme, perhaps we should start with Melbourne. Melbourne is the largest per kilometre length tram system in the world. It has successfully modernised over the years, especially from the days when I was a tram worker between 1989 and 1999. It runs, if we're thinking climate change, decarbonising transport, it runs using solar electricity. Two big power plants or solar energy plants have been built, one near Numurkah, one near Robin Vale in northern Victoria. They calculated the per annum use of the tram system, how much electricity it uses, and they've built 2 solar plants. We run beautiful mixture of trams. We've preserved our original W-class trams on the City Circle line. The tram were still common in use. And then we go through with trams from the 1980s, 90s, so Z-class trams, A-class trams, B-class articulated trams, and then we've come into the modern era with a variety of Siemens, Alstom and Bombardier built low floor trams, of which the latest batch is the E-class. They're a wonderful tram car. They're quite reliable, and I'm been a passenger while I was living in Melbourne. I lived in between the number 11 tram line and the number 86 tram line, both high frequency, both running low floor trams, the most modern of the E-class trams. So we're blessed in Melbourne. When we first came to Kolkata, it was in 1994, and then we started series of events from 96, 97, 2001. What we encountered when we first saw the tramways was it was still high frequency. The Howrah Bridge had just closed in 1994. The High Court line had closed in 1995. But outside of that, the system stayed stable for the number of tram depots and the workshops until well into the 2010s. What the infrastructure was the main problem, so we started doing tram events, but with an eye on helping with the technical exchange as well. So there were a lot of tram derailments. The patronage was still high in the 1990s. There was a transport minister called Shyamul Chakraborty from the CPM government that wanted to do something similar to what the TMC government's doing now, which was make it more just a heritage-only system. There was resistance, and mainly it was through a camaraderie we had with the tram workers and the tramway unions of the time that led the initial resistance with Dr. Debashish Bhattacharya, and a tram activist. So we got together. Mick Douglas found Debashish's letters. I was in Belgacha Depot in 1994. We formed a friendship between South Melbourne Depot and Belgacha, and we hosted our first tram event in 1996 with an eye to celebrate tram culture, to celebrate tram tradition, but to also promote the benefits of a well-run, high-frequency tramways. They've always been important tenures. And we do this in Melbourne quite well. There's a very strong artistic attachment with our tramways, artists painting trams, and we brought the tradition of the performing tram conductor to Kolkata. So decorating trams, celebrating culture, doing stories, doing history, but also looking at a high-functioning, high-frequency tramways. Part of our expression has been to talk about the global revival of tramways. So our friendship was based on Kolkata being the only true surviving tram system in India and Melbourne being the only true continuous use surviving system in Australia. In fact, outside of Europe, with Hong Kong, we're allies, so we've got a lovely linkage here. We were three of the rare surviving continuous use tram systems outside of Europe. Over the time, we saw some of the problems that Kolkata had, and largely it was to do with infrastructure. So there were a lot of tram derailments in the period that I saw between 94 and 2001. And the Kolkata Tramways Company, the CTC, were trying their best. I always found the chairman managing directors to be quite progressive. They were arm's length from government. And so Mr. Dilip Chakraborty, Mr. Sudhir K. Day, they did, I felt, have the tram system in their heart. And I think Mick will attest that we built close relationships with the unions, with the tram workers, with senior management, with the works manager, Mr. S.K. Mitra at Nonapakura, with the chairman managing directors. and that led to a close relationship with the Transport Minister of the time, Subhash Chakraborty. And I think in some ways we helped and has a positive influence, because as we found out what the problems were, each tram jatra we would come back with some solutions, either supplied by the tram enthusiasts or the Public Transport Corporation. An example was tram track renewal. So in 2001, as a part of a 3-month tram jatra, Michael and I had organised a track study, and we brought with us a representative of a tram junction manufacturer that was famous in Melbourne. I think they did some things in Hong Kong. They definitely supplied switches and points to the Toronto tramways. And we brought Michael McGuffick across, and we did track inspections to highlight that the system needed track renewal. There was a loss of confidence from passengers if trams were constantly derailing. The good relationship we built up with Transport Minister Subhash Chakraborty then saw some federal government money and state government money put into a complete overhaul of tram track through Kolkata. And it's important for us when we're considering what could happen today. So over a 10-year period, all of North Calcutta was renewed. Rabindra Sarani, College Street, Bidan Sarani, Shambhajar Five Ways, APC Boss Road, AJC Boss Road, Bibi Gongali Street, Esplanade, BBD Bagh, and the southern routes. Unfortunately, we lost track reservation at the same time that the southern routes were being renewed. That was a loss. And we lost tram stops, safe, secure places for people to cross and enter the trams. And so in a way, the southern routes were hurt a little bit. If I can move very quickly onwards, so I saw for a big period, and I was doing long stints in Kolkata, 8 weeks in 97, all tram routes, all tram depots, 3 months in 2001, again, all tram routes, all depots, a lot of time at Nonapakura. My background as a driver and conductor means I'm an operator of trams. So I understand what damage that derailments do. When we came for the Puri Beshbondu tram jatra in 2012, most of the track had been renewed. It was like a dream. All the depots were open still. Nonapakura was building beautiful new style lightweight trams. And as Mr. Mitra and Mr. Ghosh would tell me, they built them specifically with fiberglass bodies because they didn't want to damage the tram track. The steel-bodied Jessup and Burn standard trams did some damage to tram track. So 2012 and 13 were probably the best years in that it was a fully functioning tram system from what I'd seen in 96, let's say. Derailments had dropped. Patronage had returned. I was amazed to see the patronage on College Street, Bidan Sarani, especially North Kolkata. The patronage really bounced back. So we had a period of time in the teens, the 2000s and 10s, with reliable tram track. At the same time, the overhead electrical had been renewed when the new tram track was laid, and the substations where you have the feed in, there's a substation at Kalighat Depot, all these important infrastructural components that need to make a good functioning tram system, they had been renewed and a little bit updated. So the electrical feed was much better and the tram track was good, and Nonapur was building very good recycling existing tram car stocks and being really innovative. I would have loved Alok to have been able to take over the running in 2012. He would have inherited a functional tram system that at that stage would have worked really well with the PPP, with a good operator coming in. So at that point you had workshops with all the skills, a foundry, a truck shop, an electrical shop. Every part of the tram car could be renovated and rebuilt. The track department at Rajabudget Tram Depot at PWD was then maintaining the existing track. The interesting thing about the quality of the tram track was that it was very much like Melbourne of the 1990s. When I saw it in 2012, I thought, wow, if this theme is twin cities, the track looked exactly like Melbourne, laid in mass concrete. And I'm proud to say it has survived the monsoons, because the problem with the old track was the water would get under the cobblestone and it would destabilise the tram track. If you look now at the quality of the track, it largely survives the wet seasons quite well. There are parts that need repair. There's always going to be broken rail joints, but it's largely survived quite well. So I would say the current state of the tram track is reasonably good. And lately we had a tram driver from Vienna that came and looked and made the same comments with the CTUA. So let's think perhaps of the possibilities in the time I've got left. If you, for instance, one example, Ballygunge has the rail terminus. If you re-reserved the track between Ballygunge and the Kalighat Metro, you would have a 10-minute tram service, 15-minute tram service with tram stops again between the rail interchange at Ballygunge and the metro interchange at Kalighat. We had this experience in 2023. It was like the old days. We had the one of the Tramjatra trams sat at Ballygunge Gumti for about 15 minutes. As the passengers came out of the railway station, the tram filled up completely. And even without track reservation and the difficulty of people not safely being able to get out and get onto a tram stop, the tram was full and it took people to Kalighat Metro and lots of people onto Tollygunge. So there is massive potential for the tramways as it is at the moment. And you think that this could happen in so many other parts of the system where you'd have the metro and you'd have the tramways as a feeder service. One of the sad things is I think we've got to fight against the amount of flyovers and the money that is spent on private cars. And even your public bus system is suffering. All apart from the metro, and you've got some electric buses, but it looks like the number of buses is even down. So public transportation, and the big gap is the tramways. So a couple of reports. Nonapur, for instance, which was such an epicenter of tram knowledge, beautiful, has 280 people left. You're about to lose all the expertise. They're not employing anyone. The electrical shop was empty. The truck shop was empty. And so perhaps I can finish there and say there's great potential, but but I think we need a bit of activism to try to hold the system and then get input in, and especially around climate change, where decarbonising transport in big urban centres is such an important thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Roberto, for sharing with us your vast experience of almost over 2 decades working with the Calcutta Tramway, starting from Belgachia Tram Depot to the present day status. Thank you for giving us a wonderful overview of the whole thing. So, but I would say that I would now like to take the opportunity to introduce Mr. Roberto De Andrea. He is a former Melbourne trammie and a long-time Kolkata Melbourne tram jatran. He is an environmental educator and co-founder of Tram Jatra. Inspired by a 1994 visit to Kolkata, as he mentioned, he co-founded this initiative to celebrate the environmental and cultural value of trams. A former advocate for Melbourne's tram conductors, Mr. Andre has decorated 13 trams in Kolkata and 7 in Melbourne, blending art, performance, and activism. His work, including co-curating 2025 Sundarban Tram Jatra, promotes sustainable transport and strengthens Australia-India ties, earning global recognitions. For over 2 decades, he has expanded the conductor's craft of making human connection with oral storytelling and ticket exchange to become an innovative grassroots environmental educator with his performance troupe, the Connies. I'm sure by now we are all familiar with the Connies. The conductors in Melbourne are very fondly referred to as Connies. Thank you so much, Roberto. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we will move on to our next speaker. And for that, I would like to tell you that apart from being our esteemed panelist, she is my teacher, and she comes from the same school as I went to, Our Lady Queen of the Mission School, Park Circus. Dr. Minoti Biswas Turner, a senior educational consultant from Kolkata, has a special relationship with trams and Australia as well. Both Dr. Minoti Biswas Turner and I did our schooling, as I told you, at Our Lady Queen of the Mission School, Park Circus, and the tram tracks on Syed Amir Ali Avenue were our very special neighbor. So we are tram related as well. Dr. Turner completed her MEd, majoring in special education, and PhD in education at Edith Cowan University, Perth, under the supervision of Dr. Russell Waugh. Got published more than 3 times in educational journals on educational psychology with co-author Dr. Russell Waugh. She was sponsored by EDWA to teach in senior high schools in Western Australia in the mainstream and special needs units. Later, was nominated as tutor and mentor of Indigenous students by ATAS, Aboriginal Targeted Assistance Scheme. So over to you, Ms. Dr. Minoti Biswas.
Hello, everyone. Namaskar. Well, Arpita is very fond of me, so she spoke very highly of me. But I'm really humbled for being invited to this discussion, and I'm very thankful to Brototi Parampara for having me on this panel. And I'm feeling very homesick at the moment because I'm meeting people from Australia, and where I was over a decade studying, and also I settled down there, I had a family, but had to come back because of my unfortunate turn of life. I lost my husband, so who had made me promise to come back to my city, which is the tram city of Calcutta, where I was born. So that's brought me here back again. And now I'm going to talk about my love for tram, where the city where I was born is also known as the tram city. As I hear from all of you that you are all very familiar with this city of Calcutta because of tram. So we are related to one another because of tram. So we can call it a link in the chain. As far as my memory goes, as a little girl, I grew up riding in trams, not buses. Why? Because there was safety, and Dad, with his 6 daughters, found it very, very comfortable to have us all cooped up inside the tram. And therefore, living next to the Park Circus tram depot, we were there at the depot on a Saturday evening or on a Sunday to go for a ride on the tram. It was safe, definitely, because all 6 of us would be in the tram riding from Park Circus tram depot to Howrah. That was a long ride, and we were all seated comfortably. The conductors were very, very friendly at that time. I don't know about now, because I've lost touch with tram at the moment, after COVID especially. But as far as memory goes, trams had been a second nature to us. Going to school for children coming from far away, distance away from Park Circus, tram was the best transport. Aging parents or grandparents found it most secure, safe to bring the children to school by tram, not by the bus, which was speeding all the time, and also keeping balance in a speeding bus was absolutely impossible. Going and coming back in trams was always eventful as well. That will take me to volumes of stories, so I'm going to stop there. I go back to the security in the tram. I found that the conductors were very, very personally interested in children's safety. None of us could put our hand outside the tram windows. That was one. Secondly, none could run inside the tram because there was a lot of space at that time, and it was nice having fun running in the tram. But conductors again were at the entrance guarding us from falling as well. Speed of the tram was pretty comfortable. It wasn't at all difficult to walk inside the tram when it was empty, almost empty. Peak hours were different because at that time trams were very crowded with students and office goers. But trams were preferred to buses, as I found, because even as a college student, I was able to travel from Park Circus to College Street, change again from College Street to Urquhart Square, that is Hedua as we call it, to attend classes at Scottish Church College. So tram was my main mode of transport, even as a college student. As an adult, I found that trams were preferred by aging people. They really, really found it comfortable to walk to the stop, get into the tram because of the height. To mount on the tram was not difficult for any person, child or aging person. So this is another factor that I would always appreciate whenever I think of tram. Cheap tickets, that was another factor that always attracted us to the tram. And the look of the tram was so very nice. I think it was the best looking tram I did not go to England, so I had not seen the English tram at that time. But in India, I had seen a tram in Calcutta, of course, and in Bombay. But Bombay trams were not very attractive at all. They were green in color, and they had wooden seats that could change direction according to the direction the tram went. But Calcutta trams were just beautiful. They were like ladies to me. On the other hand, I think around the world, there were trams. I think in California, they had trams. But in Australia, when I was in Australia, I did see trams in Melbourne and also in Sydney, where they, I think, call it light rail. However, the memory of tram for me will always be very, very bright, and I'm very happy to be in the city back again, the tram city of Calcutta. One more memory I have of Calcutta trams is that there were not the same kind of tram in every route. From Park Circus, there was number 21 that used to be, we called it as children, the dancing tram. It used to really woggle and jump up and down. And we would always choose the seat that was just at the entrance of the tram. It was differently designed, that particular tram, because all the other trams had the entrance in the middle of the coach, the car. But this particular tram used to have the entrance at the side. You just mount on it and you sit down. And then you turn left and you go inside the tram. So that also was pretty interesting for us as children. We always wanted to go by that, have a ride on that tram because it was a dancing tram. I think I have to end it because I've got lots of stories, but I think it will take volumes. So I have to stop here now. And thank you very much for giving me the chance to recall my days as a child, as a college student, and also as a working person when I did avail the tram for all its good qualities, for all the facilities and all the attraction that tram held for us even today, when trams are slowly disappearing from so many areas. Even Park Circus tram depot has become a bus depot. So that is quite sad. But I'm sure with all of us now joining our heads together and with experts like all of you from Australia and from India, we will try and keep our tram intact in the city of Kolkata now, as Calcutta is called. And I wish you all the best to make your fight and help us battle against irrelevance and taking away the tram from Kolkata. Thank you very much. And once again, thank you for having me on the panel.
Thank you, Dr. Minoti Biswas. It was really, I would say, a trip down memory lane for all of us. And I recall the days when I would get onto the tram with my mother. She never traveled in any other vehicle other than the tram. And like Dr. Biswas, we would take a tram from Park Circus to Howrah station and then take the connecting train to a station called Bali, where my uncle's house used to be. I still have very fond memories of those days, and I shall forever cherish them. Any questions from any of the panelists for Dr. Biswas, please? Okay, so I guess there are no questions now. So we will move on to our next panelist, Professor Sudokshina Gupta. I take this opportunity to introduce Dr. Sudokshina Gupta. Professor Sudokshina Gupta, currently a professor in the Department of Economics in the University of Calcutta, has been teaching economics, statistics, and other related subjects in undergraduate and postgraduate colleges in and around Kolkata since 1988, just after finishing her post-graduation from the Department of Economics, University of Calcutta. She did her schooling from St. John's Diocesan School, Calcutta, and her college from St. Xavier's College, Calcutta. She was awarded her PhD degree from Jadavpur University in the year 2002. Professor Shudokina Gupta today holds many administrative posts in the university and is a regular research guide. Her main areas of research interest are transport, women's issues, and education. Apart from 8 books, she has around 101 articles in English and 68 articles in Bengali published so far. She is the life member of many learned associations and institutions and is linked with many universities and autonomous institutions in various capacities and acts as member of many selection committees. She was awarded the prestigious Shiksha Ratna Award in 2018 by the government of West Bengal. She delivers popular lectures and also appears on TV talk shows regularly. Her favorite pastime, however, is to spend time with her students outside regular classes. Over to you, Professor Shudokinagu.
Well, thank you, Orpita-di. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Thanks for giving me this opportunity to be in the panel today. And I am thankful to all other panelists because they are going to listen to me. Now, I have some contradicting views regarding trams to get them back into tracks in our city, in the city of Kolkata. Now, the first, I'll just base my discussion on 4 points. First one is that trams are the first or the main argument for bringing back trams on the tracks is that they are eco-friendly, environment-friendly. Obviously, they are. But here, what we would like to point out is that the trams are truly free from tailpipe emission, unlike the other ICEs and the other vehicles which are run by petrol and diesel, etc. So they are free from tailpipe emissions. So this is where they score better than the other vehicles, and that is the main reason why people opt for trams to be there. But we must say that this electricity, in order to run more trams, we need to generate more electricity. And at present, electricity is mainly produced from coal in our country. It's thermal electricity. So the emission shifts from the cities but to the sources of electricity production. So in order to have more, say, electric vehicles and more trams and all, you need to produce more electricity, generate more electricity using more coals. The second point on which I'd like to focus is that trams are very friendly to ride for ladies, for elderly people, for children, etc. But these days, the situation is much different from what we had seen in our childhood. Even say 20 or 25 years back, the things were different. The situation, the scenes on the streets of the city were different. Because now we have too many cars and probably we cannot stop people from buying their own vehicles. We have easy loans, we have a great supply of cars, both from our own country and from other foreign countries. So we cannot restrict people from buying their own vehicles, neither two-wheelers nor four-wheelers, because nobody would like to sacrifice their safety, speed, comfort, etc. by riding into or using public transport. And you know that we have only 6% of the entire city of Kolkata dedicated to roads. And for encroachment and all, Kolkata being a very unplanned city, and it has also borne the brunt of partition and uh, refugees and other asylum seekers from other countries across the state, across the borders of other states, other countries, etc. So, and it grew up in a very unplanned way. The settlement structure is different. For so much of encroachment and all, the road space even becomes narrower, less than 6%. Whereas in Mumbai, Delhi, etc., we have 23 to 25% of road space dedicated. 23 to 25% of space of the city dedicated to roads. So it's very difficult, to take back trams, and because it's very difficult to get into the space. You cross the portion of the roads, and then you get into trams. Once you board the tram, it's fine. The third point that I'd like to focus on is that the metro expansion is taking place very fast, and other cars also. So the number of passengers is really dwindling in trams. So we don't have enough passengers to ride the trams these days than what we used to have quite a few years back. So as a result, the revenue of the tram company or CTC or the TRAMS, whatever, the government, it's fully nationalized now, is also dwindling. And the government has to pay salaries and all to their staff. So if you don't have enough, if you don't earn enough money just to pay them, I'm not talking about profits and all. And it is being, run on subsidies that we, the taxpayers, pay. So this is very difficult for the government also to run trams. It's not that because they are reducing the tram service, the passengers are reducing in number. It's not that. It's the other way around. Passengers are reducing in number, therefore the trams are becoming very uneconomic these days. It's not cost effective anymore. And the fourth point, or the last point that I'd like to say, is related to the first point only, that the coal production. If you want to run more trams, if you want to run more electric vehicles, which is coming against an alternate again as an alternative to ICEs, you have to generate more electricity from coals, and otherwise you can also introduce other sources of energies like solar, like other water, anything renewable energy. But the thing is, it's in a much broader way that people are talking about is about the just transition, which is a different. I don't know whether we should bring about that argument here, but it's true that if you move or shift out from coal production to other energy production, that's good in many ways. But at the same time, it's not a just transition that way, because we know too many people depend on coal industry for livelihood, for their livelihood. And the governments, both the central and the state governments, they earn a lot of revenue from coal as cess or whatever, and the railways also by carrying coal. So before we shift on in a broader way, before we shift on to any kind of electricity generated vehicles, all these things have to be taken into account. And particularly if we want to shift to trams, or if we want to retain trams like we used to do before, we have to think of the structure of the city, because it varies from city to city. What we have in other cities like Melbourne and all may not be, the situations are not same as we have in Kolkata, population density and everything. That's, thank you. Thank you so much. This is what all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much, Professor Shudokina Gupta, for sharing your views, which may be a trifle different from the views we heard a bit earlier from the other panelists. But we do have a question and answer session. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to unmute yourselves and put it to Professor Gupta. I see the first hand up is Mr. Alok Jain. Yes, your question, please, for Professor Gupta.
Thank you, Ms. Bhattacharjee. Professor Gupta, I have to beg to differ on a number of points that you have raised. First of all, you talked about less road space. And I think anywhere where there is a less road space, there is a even more case for having a tram, because the trams can carry much more people per square foot of road space than any car would ever do in the world. So if I can give you just a little example, a single lane of road can carry approximately 1,800 cars or 2,000 cars maximum, and that can carry maybe 2,500 people maximum. A tram line can carry almost 35 to 40,000 passenger per hour per direction in the same amount of road space. So to move more people through a city which lacks the road space, trams are always a better solution than car solution. The second thing where I would like to differ is where you mentioned that cars offer more safety, security, and comfort, safety, speed, and comfort. And I can give you innumerous examples, and I think there are enough statistics around the world that public transport is much safer than any car, private vehicle based system in the world. There are much more accidents that happen with private cars. They don't get reported because we have become totally insensitive to those accidents. So public transport accidents are more highlighted because they are so little that whenever that happens, they are sensationalized. So that's the second on the safety part. In fact, on the comfort, and having lived in many cities and traveling around multiple cities, I can tell you that it's not comfortable to sit in a congestion in a driving seat in a car. You can't go to the toilet, you can't read a book, you can't work on your phone, you can't do anything. You are literally chained to the steering wheel. Whereas if you are sitting in the tram, you can, or any public transport vehicle for that matter, you can be doing anything that you want. I can be on my phone, I can clear my emails, I can talk to my friends, I can take a coffee break, I can take a toilet break, I can do multiple things that I would like to do, which with a car you can't do. So in terms of comfort, it all depends how you want to look at. If you look at comfort only as a seat, then possibly yes. But if you look at comfort as a parameter of many things around us, which we live for, then certainly I find a public transport vehicle much more comfortable than a private car. When it comes to speed, and again, there are a lot of studies around the world. If the trams they run on a dedicated right of way, they can beat the speed of any traffic stream. A tram today can run at 70 kilometers an hour, whereas no car in Calcutta would achieve 70 kilometers an hour in the congested approaches. So cars, certainly, there is a resurgence of trams or resurgence of public transport precisely for these reasons around the world, where the cities or old European cities even, which lack the amount of road space, the only way they could move people within their cities is by using public transport. So this is really an area where I think it's completely different take on public transport that I would like to take. The third thing you mentioned about the coal, and I think that is really, it's like saying that we need to keep the alcohol shop just to keep all the people who are alcoholics, getting going, just to feed their drug addiction. I don't think that is the right logic. To me, coal is on the way out. We should be pushing it out. India is a growing country. The energy demand for India is increasing. And certainly that delta, that increase that we are looking at, we don't have to satisfy that increase with coal. Coal can stay where it is at the moment. And the renewable energy can come in and feed that gap. And I don't think revenue for the government is really the driving factor for keep pumping dirty air into or toxins into the air, and which is affecting the health of the people, which is affecting the health of the city. Most of the cases where we create good cities, they are good for the economic input and people economic activity, and that itself generates a lot more benefit. I can give you an example of Estonia, Tallinn. In Tallinn, when they introduced free public transport for the city, they had two choices. They had to build either more roads and provide more facilities for cars, or make a public transport totally free. They went with the free option. And when they made it free, the city actually earned much more revenue than they were doing with, spending all this money building roads and for cars and parking and all those things. So I think it's a different perspective of economics that you need to look at. I don't think it's a very, we are taking a very linear approach that if I have 2 lanes and if there's a traffic, just add a third lane. And nowhere in the world it has worked. I can give you multiple examples all over the world where adding lanes can never solve traffic. The traffic is solved by managing your capacity, not by adding capacity. So with that, I will just stop there. So sorry for, it's a completely
No,
different.
no, we always can differ on our opinions. That's I don't take offense on that. But I didn't get your question quite clearly. What was your question exactly? I
My
thought
question was
we
basically,
were supposed to have questions here.
well, my question is that on these 3 points that take you make, you told about safety, comfort, and
Safety, comfort, let me be clear. If I have my own car, I'd like to get into my car from my doorstep, and I'd like to get down from the car where I work or where it's school or wherever I go to. And but for public transport is always better than 20, 30 cars. That's a theoretical thing, no doubt. We have all studied that. We teach that in class also, because for pollution and congestion and accidents and all, public transports are much better. But to be practical and to have practical knowledge by sitting or staying in Calcutta, riding on cars through the cities of Kolkata, this is what I find, that if I get the comfort of sitting in my car from my home door, I'd like to do that instead of going to the bus stop and getting into a crowded bus or whatever. And for I think you had also said about the road space. Yes, the road space. As I say, the too many ICs are there now. ICEs. It's not possible right now for the government to reduce the number of cars on the city, to reduce to produce more or to introduce more public transport, because nobody would like to leave his or her comfort, as I said, of going through or traveling through a car. So this is all my view. You can always have your own views. Why not? So the perspectives are different. But I didn't get the question.
and if I can
A
just
rather
add
interesting
a
question and
quick
answer
addition,
session, Jahan.
just a quick statement, Arpita, if I can make, is that I live in a city, Hong Kong,
And
where,
another thing, I think it's unfair to compare coal production with the alcoholics and alcohol production. I
well,
think
we can
it's
always vex, about it. But honestly, I live in a city of 7 million people, which and a city has only 10% of road space, so which is not very different from Kolkata. The economic ability of per capita GDP of Hong Kong is almost equal to United States, and still 90% of the daily travel happens on public transport. Everybody uses public transport. Owning a car is not everybody's dream. Reaching their destination is everybody's dream, and that happens to good quality public
yes,
transport.
that's a
So
mindset
yeah,
of people.
so
Yes.
I think
So
that is so.
really need a change in mindset to be able to move on to using public transport as opposed to the polluting vehicles, I call them, the automobiles and cars which we have on the streets of Kolkata today. It's not a question of whether we have coal or we don't have coal. Yeah, we need to move to a space where we use alternative energy, not depend on coal. After all, it is an exhaustible source of energy. We all know that. But yeah, we do need a change in mindset. And I'm sure such panel discussions will help us to think in that way and make our minds work. So, may I now move on to our next speaker, Mr. Mick Douglas. Welcome, Mr. Mick Douglas. We are indeed very happy to have you with us in this panel today. Mr. Mick Douglas is an Australian artist and curator, creative practice researcher, and co-founder of TRAM, an RMIT University associate professor. Mr. Douglas has authored Tram Jatra, Imagining Melbourne and Kolkata by Tramways, and led projects like W11 Tram for the 2006 Melbourne Commonwealth Games Cultural Festival. His work, including co-curating 2025 Sundarban Tram Yatra, blends performance, installation, and socially engaged art, fostering dialogue on urban transport and ecological resilience across continents. He is the temporary steward of 40 acres of revegetating bushland on the traditional land of the Jab, Barang, and Jadarwajali people in Southeast Australia, where climate change and colonial land management practices are increasing the frequency and force of extreme wildfires. Please excuse me if there has been any mispronunciation on my part in mentioning the names of the Australian people of that particular area of Southeast Australia. Thank you so much, and over to you, Mr. Mick Douglas.
Arpita. Thank you for your very warm and generous introduction and welcome. Look, my work as an artist and through Tram Jatra as a key project over, as Roberto has said, 3 decades now, has really had me fascinated with the culture of transport. Modes of transport certainly have technical dimensions, but they are very significantly cultural. They come to acquire and be attributed cultural values. They also reveal something about the social and cultural priorities of their context. And of course, our urban environments, whilst we might say then some environments are not planned cities, of course they are a combination of successive decisions. Some decisions are very large and have a large impact. That sort of decision brings Kolkata and Melbourne together, both being the former capitals of their former British colonial cities, so-called jewels in the crown of the British Empire of the day. And it is that transportation technology of tramways, which was introduced by British engineering ideas and British urban planning ideas of the day, that were big decisions that had a big impact upon planning. There's also many examples of the interconnection of transport system planning and the change of not only land use, but land exchange value. There are many examples of how the choices about where particular transport amenities are placed increase the value of exchange of land, which is of course of interest to some sectors of society. So in us considering the relevance of tramways, I would put forward the view that decisions about tramways and any other transportation and major urban infrastructure is always weighing up something of the past, of what has been inherited and brought forward to the present moment, but also choices and visions about what a future might offer. Yes, weaning societies off coal is a very significant issue of our day, but it's very clear that there is mounting evidence and pressure for all nations to be decarbonising and embracing an energy transition as best possibly, I would agree, justly. But justly does not necessarily mean that each do their own, because what is the role of governance if each does their own? We wouldn't be modeling something of a democratic society. So there is questions there about the ways in which managing resources and the roles of leadership in managing resources justly is the call of our day. So being attached to tramways simply for their past, maybe nostalgic attachment, to my mind, is not justification to take them forward into the future. However, it is worth knowing why it is that tramways and these tracked forms of transport do attract a unique kind of cultural attachment. It is something to do with the predictability, the ease, the legibility of a tracked form of transport at street level that gives people a sense of security. They know where this tram line is going to go. That's what gives the passenger a sense of ease and comfort in the ride. It allows them to daydream out the window or attend to their emails or Facebook, etc., because they know that there's a degree of predictability in this form of transport. They also make public space. There is something unique about the scale of tramways as a collective form of transport, which gathers together a scale of human bodies at a level where there is a presence and awareness of those human bodies that are temporarily cohabiting that public space. That opens up that possible sense of safety, a sense of security, a sense of familiarity, a sense of perhaps neighborhoods moving on tracks, such that one can open up to the stranger, to the other. One can meet the gaze of another and acknowledge the presence of many people making their way in life for a short moment together, held in a way that we're never held together in private automobiles, where we actually disavow our mutual connections by disavowing our connection in public space. So in that sense, tramways are not to be proposed as an answer to all urban planning challenges or all transportation challenges. And I don't think any of us who have been working with tramways would advocate that. They are an intermediate form of transport that has a very important role within a multimodal mix of transportation options. They have a very important and unique role because of that nature of being tracked, being possibly street level, also in their more contemporary form of light rail, being able to operate on prioritized lanes or even small sections of dedicated reserve track, etc. So to my mind, our choices about our present and future are cultural, social, political, and economic choices of our time. To maybe just refer to the book that you mentioned, Tramjatra, Imagining Melbourne and Kolkata by Tramways, that tries to glean something of what we're learning along the way. One is that this 30 years of work has actually evolved from friendship. And that says something about the scale of tramways, that others, people who are different to each other, can meet each other and form friendships in an unthreatening, safe way. So just to refer to one of our colleagues in this book, because it's just reminded me that he says something very useful, and that's Bruce Wern, a sociologist, who just makes in the book 20 stops of short points. This is a rather sort of chunky short point that he makes on his 20th stop. But if you'll bear with me to read a very short paragraph, I think it pulls us back out of the minutiae and perhaps gives us a bigger picture about what are we weighing up here. He says that public movement is political, economic, aesthetic, and purposeful. Public movement gives evidence of the way societal power is used to shape the life of the citizenry. to give expression to how we make use of personal and collective resources in terms of norms for stewardly use of resources, key in our times. Thirdly, public movement demonstrates the formation of an aesthetic fabric and lifestyle. There are choices about ways that humans want to be humans, not automatons, not merely consumers. And lastly, he says that public movement gives expression to how people view purposeful behavior and how they understand themselves as moving, as being alive. This bears relationship to perhaps what we can sometimes think of as the free choice of individuals to be free consumers and to have free independent mobility. But I would suggest that it is somewhat of a disavowal on our part if we do not take responsibility for the ways that cities are a combination of collective agreements about how we might live together better. So clearly the issue of prioritization is weighed heavily here. Prioritization of rights between individuals and collectives, groupings. So I would advocate for a less timid form of governance that actually recognizes that even the unplanned city is actually a succession of planned decisions. And we're at a time now where some leadership is required to make the kind of decisions that are going to be necessary to take cities like Kolkata and even cities like Melbourne into a more potentially prosperous future where more life is afforded. Not just the life of some, not just the life of human beings, but life systems in their entanglement together. So with that, I think I should leave and just say I'm very thankful and appreciative of the 3 decades of friendship that I've enjoyed with collaborators in Kolkata and Melbourne to undertake this open-ended, if you like, research journey of Tram Jatra. You Bengalis will be well aware of the Jatra, the journey, is also a theatrical form. It is a cultural form. So we've been exploring this open-ended passage for many years now and have many friends and have learnt much. I hope that we can continue to learn and surprise each other by comparing between different contexts. Not to think that they should be the same by any means. No, rather be engaged with for their specific particularity of their past, their present, but also the differences of visions for viable futures. I look forward to the rest of the conversation with you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mick. Thank you so much. You added an entirely different perspective to the entire discussion. Yeah, looking at it in the vast space and the wider space where we bring in culture, where we bring in art, and where we bring in the closeness of humanity is a different perspective altogether, and we really appreciate it. And it kind of opens up a very new space for all of us to look at, to think, and build on this 30-year relationship to come to some solution for the golden times of trams in Kolkata back again. So any questions for Mr. Mick Douglas from any of the panelists?
I could ask one.
Yes, Roberto. Yes.
Hey,
Yes.
Mick, we learned, I'm interested, that was a beautiful thing that not only is the entanglements for humans, but I think what we explored with the recent Sundarban Tram Jatra is the entanglement with the natural world. And it was interesting at the Citizens Forum that one of the early speakers in the first session said that the dumping of pollution out of Kolkata on the Sundarban, and we identified the Sundarban as being vital for the survival of Kolkata, was the transport sector. And that fascinating speaker said it was almost like 50-something% of the pollution layer that comes out from Kolkata is dumped in on the Sundarban, which would affect photosynthesis of leaves, soil toxicity, etc. So I don't know if you want to elaborate there, but that was, it's great that we're not just talking people, that in a way we related trams to being a natural world citizen as well.
Yeah, I think the statistic, as I remember it, was that a 1% increase in carbon emissions in Kolkata that is deposited has its effects in the mangrove forest, the largest mangrove contiguous forest area on the planet, in the Sundarban, has a 15% effect of reducing photosynthesis on the mangrove forests. So it's an exponential effect. I think that's also, we really wanted to explore in the last iteration of Tramjatra, called Sundarban Tramjatra. We really wanted to bring awareness of how decisions around transportation in Kolkata are not independent from larger decisions that need to be made around energy transition and around climate change, and how the criteria that we use to justify decisions needs to be much broader in at least a bio-regional setting. And that's where the Sundarban and Kolkata and the prospects of their future, both ecologically, economically, socially, population-wise, and in relationship to other than human species, these are entangled. So decisions need to be much broader in the basis of what's informing wise decisions and stewardship of resources.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mick, for the wonderful response to the question raised by Roberto. And of course, the Sundarban Tram Jatra, where we all had the opportunity, at least I had the opportunity to meet up with all of you, and we'll end up with this panel discussion today. We hope to take things forward and look at maybe broader solutions, maybe a change of mindset, or in whichever way we want a nice solution, an eco-friendly solution, a revenue-generating solution. After all, money matters. We cannot run without money. That is, as an economist by training, I would say that, and I'm sure Professor Gupta would agree with that, and I think she did mention that. So anyway, now we are back to our discussion session, and now we have Mr. Mahadev Shi as our next panelist to join us. Let me first, I guess all of you know him, but for our viewers, let me just introduce Mr. Mahadev Shi. Mr. Mahadev Shi is a well-known filmmaker and co-founder of Tram Jatra, a cultural festival initiated in 1996 to celebrate and preserve the tram heritage of Kolkata and Melbourne. As an activist, Mr. Shi uses art, film, and public engagement to advocate for trams as an eco-friendly transport solution amid climate change concerns. Artistic director and co-curator for the 2025 Sundarban Tram Jatra, his documentary, Tram Jatra, highlights the 20-year friendship between the tram communities of the two cities, emphasizing sustainability and cultural exchange. Mr. Shi is also the General Secretary of the Calcutta TRAM Users Association. He tirelessly campaigns against misconceptions and trams, pushing for their modernizations and survival in the city of joy. Over to you, Mr. Mohadev.
Thank you, Arpita, for your kind introduction about myself.
No,
I really don't know I deserve so many, flowers you added to introduce me. Well, I mean, I love TRAM, definitely. I mean, that's my first. I can just start with that. And then I think, well, I would also like to mention that I'm a documentary filmmaker. And, and there is some connection between this, me being a filmmaker and love with the TRAM. But, I'll just go back to the history a little bit. Well, I mean, like so many of us have this fond memories of Calcutta growing up with trams. But I didn't grow up in Calcutta, so I grew up in Sirampur. So I didn't have so many fond memories as a child. But then, of course, as I passed my high school days, then I started coming to Calcutta, and then, of course, I just saw the tram. And it was almost like love at first sight. I just felt in love with the tram. People ask me why. Well, I mean, it's very difficult to explain. Well, it's just a kind of maybe looking at a tram, looking at a train, maybe moving in a city. That's the kind of conception you have as a child. That someone walked in my mind. I just found it very much interesting. Okay, but anyway, I just fell in love. But but I didn't visit Calcutta too often. Okay, so the memory was very, 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 very small, very little. And after that, I went to study film school. So when I came back after the film school, and I started my career in Calcutta, so as a naturally, so TRAM became the very, very first very interesting image for me too, and also because I started loving TRAM. So and somehow I felt TRAM is the very, very most unique thing of Calcutta. It's a kind of a treasure house. So that's why I named my film Kathir Box. Because Kathir Box we always use as a treasure box. So that's why I gave the name on my film this Kathir Box. So this film I started making in 1993, and then incidentally I happened to meet Rabato and make in 1996. And then join hands with them, to start this TRAM Jatra. But, initially, I was making this film as a kind of a romantic film, It's my romantic love with Calcutta, with the people, also the heritage value of TRAM, all these things, Not so much I was, pointing to the sustainability factor of the TRAM, the other important factors of TRAM. So when we did this 2001 TRAM Jatra, then slowly I started thinking changing my ideas, and I visited Melbourne also because this 2001 TRAM Jatra it happened in Melbourne also. Okay, so when I visited Melbourne, then actually my eyes opened, more like then I could see what is it called livable cities. That's the first time well I didn't visit much foreign countries before 2000. But maybe, I had gone to England, so Australia was my second visit. But then I could see, what is livable cities, And then I sort of started thinking, Calcutta, we have this asset, very great asset, the TRAM system, Why can't we make, livable cities like Melbourne, So, then so the first part was very romantic thing, my Kathir Box. So then I started my thing. Well, part two film, it's also, think of, what are the highlight the sustainability factor of TRAM in Calcutta, So when I started thinking all those things, then I suddenly realized, there's a lot of myths, has been created in Calcutta. And Calcutta people are very, they're very good at, creating gossips, creating myths, So, I will just, go through some of the myths actually, I think, we need to really think we need to really find out, how much those myths are, making sense, So, I'll just first, these myths are again, I think most of us knows actually, but I'll just go one by one. Okay, for instance, first of all, the blame, the myth is, TRAM is slow. I think it's absolute myth, because, when the average speed of Calcutta is 15-20 kilometers, then how can you say, TRAM is slow in Calcutta? And besides also, what happens, why TRAM is slow? This is mainly the reason is the, in efficient traffic management. That is the main reason. Because often we see that there are cars obstructing tramways. Often we see that the trams are overtaking trams. So these are the reasons. If we really make a proper management, traffic management, we follow proper traffic management systems. I think this tram can move much better than other transport industry, as mentioned by Mr. Alok Jain. Okay. So this myth needs to be broken also. Because in Calcutta tram also can run in 40 kilometers per hour, provided given the options. Okay. So this myth is not valid. We should get rid of this myth from our mind. Okay. So the next thing is trams is the main reason of high traffic congestion such as Calcutta. This is again another myth. This is also very baseless. Because tram reduces congestions, air pollution, and help decarbonize, as this is a mass transport. One of the major reasons that trams have come back to the world. We should not forget, it's a mass transport. It's been considered a grade 1 transport globally, because it's a mass public transport. It can replace 3 buses, or it can replace 40 cars together. So which create congestions, tram or the buses. Also, I'll tell you some figures. In 2000, it's a figure. It's a report published by the Kolkata police. In 2011, the total cars, registered cars, including all the buses, everything, vehicles in Calcutta was 21 lakhs. Okay, and then in 2022, it increased to 51 lakhs. 30 lakhs. Of course, it's a metropolitan. It's not only the main Calcutta. It's a greater metropolitan cities. Just imagine, in 10 years, the 30 lakhs, new cars have been registered. And I'm not adding their influx from the Howrah, the other cities when it's adding to the Calcutta thing, And if you think of tram was running in 2011, there's about 180 trams, and 2022, there are only a maximum 10 trams are running, So, so there is no trams running, there are hardly any trams running. Still, Calcutta is equally congested, And, no one has done any experimentation or scientific proof, the places where the tram doesn't run, is those routes, those places are less congested? It's not, absolutely it's not, okay? So this myth, the tram, creates congestion, it's again a very, very baseless myth. We should remove this myth from mind. It's basically, we should have a very, efficient traffic management. That is number one. And also, most of the Calcutta cars and buses, it's very old, it's a badly maintained car, I mean, they create a lot of air pollution. So we have to, think of that in our mind, when we are thinking about the comparison between tram and the buses. Okay, so now the next point is Kolkata's roads are narrower for trams to run. Well, this is again, I will agree with Mr. Alok Jain. That is precisely the reason, we should make actually, more roads, the congested road, there we should make it absolutely, for the dedicated for the tram only. Why do you need to put the buses there in a congested state? Because, or even autos, because, if the tram can carry 120 people, so all those roads, because, trams wise is the same as the bus, okay? It's not even more than the bus. So it can easily run when the buses is running. So in fact, all those, for instance, I'll give you some roads, College Street. Why do we need to run trams on this College Street? Sorry, why do we need to run the buses? We just make it dedicated for the tram, and it's so much comfortable for not only for the old people, I'll just beg to differ with Mrs. Gupta that, only the old people. No, it's not. College students, the women, the children, and also we are forgetting, there are so many physically challenged people in our city, we don't consider anything about them. Tram can be a very, very comfortable, transport for these physically challenged people. And also, like, you will say how many of them, it is the responsibility of the government, if there is even 10,000 or even there is even 5,000, everyone should have to have that privilege, so whatever they want to enjoy, whatever the need, this is the government's, responsibility to provide the services for all sections of people also, and, if we also consider that it's a very, very cheap mode of transport, that is another added things in that, So I think, trams should be, the roads which are narrow, only the trams should be given preference there. Okay? So my next point is, now people are saying that metro rail is a better option, Well, metro rail is definitely a better option. There is no doubt about that, because it can really take you faster, But then, metro railways and trams are not competitive, It is, supplemented each other. There are places which are not connected with metro, and also you should not forget, metro, economically not viable for major passengers compared to the tram, There are many people who cannot afford the metros, And other thing is the expenses to build up a metro infrastructure and to build up a, the tram infrastructure is much more less, infrastructure you need for tram. Even the maintenance cost is, much less, So while you are talking about the economic problem, we should also think of, places. I'm not saying, stop metro. Of course, metro is required, but also, it can be like, complement to each other. We should make it like that. Okay. Now my next point is auto rickshaws move more swiftly and transport people more efficiently. This is again rubbish. Auto rickshaw, what kind of safety you have? They actually disobey all kind of rules. And they operate the autos very illegal. They don't follow any rules, and also, and in terms of the way Calcutta autos people rides, is that actually like we really want to support that thing? Is that a way of life? Is that like little city has that kind of thing? 10 people, 6, 7 people, entering into auto, So, that is also that is also no excuses, auto can live, move faster and take you faster, Okay, so now my next point is that electric buses are better than trams. E-buses serve the same purpose as tram. E-buses are the future rather than trams. Okay, well, see, the thing is, that is partly true probably, e-buses is the future. I mean, it's not true because, we have also think the e-buses, the energy they use, the lithium batteries that they use, the toxic substance they'll create, that will again, is going to create, a lot of pollution in the city. So, and tram is a kind of a, zero carbon emission. All of us, we know that, So there is a tram is definitely better option than e-bus. And also in terms of carrying people, it's much more people, you can carry on a tram than the e-buses. Okay. Now my next point is, another thing we don't talk about much, Calcutta has a huge, health problem, because of the air pollution, I'll just give you some kind of survey in I think in 2017, Delhi School of Economics, they actually, made a survey in Calcutta. They actually checked, 18, there is this, air checking points, So they checked all those, air checking points, and they found, the most of the, most of this checking machine has a very, very critical figure, It's actually, they actually figured out 85% of the people, they suffer in respiratory disease, and whereas, there are 15 people only for the waterborne disease. So you can imagine, even, I think the Nillathan College Hospital and West Bengal Government Pollution Board, they also surveyed something together. They also found the same thing. 70% people of Calcutta is suffering from the respiratory problem. So that is a huge problem. We should address. Is this the future? Is this the work? Is this the the system we are going to offer to a future generation? So that is one of the major reasons. TRAM should get the priorities to the all kinds of other modes of vehicles. And now, the other thing is, as a citizen, I think all of us has some responsibility. As Meek also pointed out, is that the city, is it only made for the people who only own cars? We will not make any kind of, rules for the city, for the public, for the general people. For instance, at the moment, Calcutta has the main Calcutta. There is about 8 lakh registered cars, And Calcutta has only 1850 kilometers of route length, and this out 8 lakhs car, and then double number of two-wheelers and the three-wheelers. Okay, so you can imagine how much spaces all this four-wheelers and the two-wheelers are taking, and compared to the tram, it's just nothing. Tram just takes maybe the 10% of the route space of Calcutta. Okay. And the other thing is, it's very, very concerned, you must think of it. This survey also says, that this 1850 kilometer road space, there's about 432 cars in each kilometer. So that means, if you really calculate actually, so So in a one kilometer space, or kind of road space, there is actually a 1.6 kilometer car is standing. So it's really creating so much congestion. It's in the tram, it's the private car and the two wheelers that's creating congestion. And the thing is, prediction is, if we we have to take some strict measure. Also, why should we have to give the each person allowed to buy 3 cars, 2 cars. Because we have to save the city. We have to think of the other people. Calcutta is not for the people only for who owns cars. There's so many other people. We have to think of everybody. So that is the reason you have to think of the mass public transport. The Delhi has started this odd even numbers. Maybe we should also doing that kind of system. We should also make some kind of restriction. Allowing license every year, things like that. So, well, I mean, I'll now. I think considering all the positive side of tram, there is no other better alternate, mass transport than tram in Calcutta at the moment. And also, we should not forget, this is a kind of the greatest assets we Calcutta have already existing networks, to fight the battle of air pollution. Okay. So, and also, well, I mean, it has to be like, modernized. I'm not saying we should continue.
Yeah, just come in for a minute, please. I think we need to give some time for the rest of the speakers. So
okay.
Just
yeah, I'm just finishing. I'm just finishing. Okay, I'm just finishing. Okay. So basically, what I'm saying, we should actually, protect these assets we have. Government should maybe change their policies, and also, think of bringing the back tram to the city, and become a model for the other cities of Calcutta. To prioritize the electric vehicles for the urban transport system. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mahadev Shi, for enlightening us with so many facts about the Calcutta tramways, particularly when we talk about the speed and the space, etc. And for the question answer session, I think we'll come back to the question answer session after the other speakers have spoken. So the next speaker for the day is Professor Sunil Ashra. Professor Sunil Ashra is Professor of Economics and Public Policy in the Management Development Institute in Gurgaon. He is a public transport enthusiast and is presently working with Delhi Metro to enhance its reach as well as how to make it more viable. He teaches a course on public transport and infrastructure and has done his dissertation on Indian Railways. Over to you, Professor Sunil Ashra.
Thank you, Professor Arpita. And it's very kind of a insightful discussion and many, many interesting points coming out. And I really commend the issues raised by so many diverse personalities and experts, especially Mick's point about the community, which is basically, I find a very, very important point. In today's generation, I think we are all becoming very lonely. And that dying of public transportation actually is another nail in the coffin of that pandemic, which is spreading all over the world. And from that point of view also, I think public transportations should be encouraged. Now, since I am largely an economist, so I'll try to stick to some of these perspectives. And one of the major challenges which I feel public transport in general and Calcutta trams in particular face is that road space is a big constraint. And that constraint is not because of trams, because trams constitute less than 1% of the space needed for running the trams. Because as we have been pointing out, the numbers have dwindled, whereas the number of private vehicles, especially cars and as well as two-wheelers, have gone up. And that itself means that traffic jam is not because of trams, but because of the other mode of transportation, and especially cars, because most of the cars are driven by 1 or 2 persons, and that is the major cause. And we know it across the world. The problem is who will bell the cat. The problem is people who are in the cars are the ones who largely make the policies, and their entire policy making is for their own benefit. And many times it is not even benefiting them. That is another problem, because they are having an individual perspective rather than having a social perspective. That like traffic jam, if you're stuck in a traffic jam for 1 hour, you are not benefiting yourself either. You're making everybody else worse off, but at the same time making yourself worse off also. So, and also it's cost. Time is a cost, fuel is a cost, pollution is a cost. So everything is a cost, but somewhere we ignore all these points because they are not right facing in face unless you hit a crisis, like we are hitting the crisis in terms of the climate issue in last few years. And in all the big cities, congestion is a very big problem. Traffic jams, even if you convert to electric vehicles, it's not going to go away. It's actually going to make it even more difficult. And one of the challenges I face, I also have a car, so I will definitely put myself onto the kind of in the as a culprit for the problem, is because I find this is pure economic perspective. The cost of person who's driving a car is actually very low. I see my calculation. I try to use metro or buses, but I find the kind of a time required, the kind of inconvenience I face. I find my car is still the cheapest mode of transportation. So unless I, as a policy, change that perspective, I make people like me pay more for what we are inflicting on the rest of the community. Unless that is kind of explicitly highlighted in terms of congestion pricing, like Singapore has done, and many other countries, Stockholm has done, and London has done. But again, it's something which is somehow most of the countries are not willing to do it for one reason or the other. And I think there lies the challenge of how do you make people aware that it is for their benefit. Because the thing is, when you have congestion pricing, congestion reduces, and congestion and traffic is a non-linear phenomena. Even if you reduce 20% of it, everybody is better off. And that 20% we can earmark for public transportation. Because another problem I find is public transportation is grossly underfunded. And how do you get resources? Governments are always running short of money. So then one way is to create this crowdfunding channel through which basically car owners and others pay as they drive more and more. And then now you have a automatic system of FASTag in the country, which automatically deducts money from people who are driving in the congested road. So effectively means the moment people have to pay, they will possibly not go in the hours when there's congestion. And that itself will not just help them, but help everybody. And then in the process, it's a win-win. And that money can be completely earmarked for public transportation so that government doesn't have to worry about funding this particular aspect. One of the point mentioned about was coal. Professor Gupta mentioned about coal. And coal, I think the way we are promoting electric vehicles, I don't know the argument is still any more valid. That kind of an explosion of EVs we are seeing. Definitely with the batteries and all, there are a lot of other issues. But if we can encourage private vehicles on running on batteries and all, I think it makes more sense to run metros and trams, especially trams, which are actually much less capital intensive, which can be easily replicated, and especially newer areas of the city. They can be easily kind of have the metro systems, which will be very, very useful. Here, one practical suggestion would be that we charge road tax from all the cars which come on the road, which are charged in one go in the first day of registration. And now that is effectively means my additional cost of running the car is zero. Marginal cost, which we call in economics, is zero. So basically means people use a lot of extra mileage, which if you can break this up into the how much you drive, especially in the congested area, then you can completely remove the road tax and make it even more user friendly to the people who are buying the cars. But only those who drive in the peak hours or in the congested areas, they pay the price. So that could be one way. Carbon tax could be another way through which you could basically get more resources for trams, etc., which could be used. And third, which is that a tram, obviously because of underinvestment, quality has suffered. And these days I was looking at the numbers, the number of people who are traveling has gone down like anything. And that is because their service has gone down. And if service is not available means obviously people don't want to use it. And because then it's not reliable anymore. If it's not reliable, obviously it is very difficult to sustain it. So that's why it requires, like Melbourne and other cities have done, to rejuvenate the system. And then that's where I think people who are the users, who are potential users, awareness is really, really important. And then maybe crowdfunding of the people by everybody contributes 10 rupees each, possibly we'll have a world-class system in Calcutta and maybe in other cities. And that's what my hope and dream is. And I hope this adds to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Sunil Ashraf, for showing us some ways in which we can come to, I would say, a conclusive pattern to this panel discussion. We could look for some solutions to the problems which stare at us on the face right now. So with these words, I would move to our final speaker, Mr. Alok Jain. Mr. Alok Jain is the CEO and Managing Director of TRAMS Consult, a globally recognized management consulting firm focused on sustainable urban mobility and technology-driven public transport solutions. With over 30 years of experience, Mr. Jain is an expert in public transport operations, specializing in AI, data analytics, and clean fuel technologies. He has collaborated with major operators like MTR Corporation and Kowloon Motor Bus in Hong Kong, an international trainer for the UITP, a fellow at Civic Exchange, and a speaker on multimodal integration. Mr. Jain also teaches at the University of Hong Kong and contributes to transport policy initiatives. Over to you, Mr. Jain.
Thank you very much, Arpita. And first of all, of course, thank you for inviting me for this panel. It had been a very interesting discussion, very wide. And I can maybe start by saying very simply that I do have a bit of an emotional attachment, and some of the stories that Dr. Manotti was initially talking about, I have very similar ones. My childhood was in Calcutta, and I used to have very fond memories around, trams. But I won't spend too much time on that one, because I think that part is very well covered by Dr. Manotti. So I think my experiences are very similar in that respect. What I certainly would like to talk about is that most of the cities around the world, if you see today, they have gone through a cycle of making that mistake where they promoted the private car, they allocated space to private car, they faced congestion, they faced pollution, they faced all kind of secondary issues which are not really, in economic terms, Dr. Ashraf would appreciate these are what we call indirect costs to the society. And they have created all of these problems. And now many of these cities are going backwards, and they are removing cars from their system and allocating that valuable space, urban space, to public transport. I can start by saying, look at Bangkok, where congestion used to be a huge problem back in 90s. Then they went into this major program of introducing public transport systems, and the congestion has still not gone away, but at least people have a choice of moving around in the city. They were becoming gridlocked cities. Then you look at, a lot of European cities. If you look at Amsterdam in 1970s, it was a gridlocked city, and they have gone through a complete transformation. And now it's a cycling capital of the world, and everybody moves very quickly. The pollution is gone, the parking issues are gone. A lot of those urban, what we call, these black spots, they have actually disappeared. Paris is going through a big transformation right now. They are introducing this 15-minute city concept. They're removing on-street parking from all over the city, and they are constraining the traffic, the car speed within the core Paris city, the downtown areas, to 20 kilometers an hour. So if you cannot drive more than 20 kilometers an hour within the core area near the Arc de Triomphe and those areas. And those are the kind of restrictions they are putting, because cars are causing all kind of different problems, which people who are sitting in the car don't realize. And I have a very famous story about that. Everybody sitting behind the wheel in a car who's driving thinks everybody else is a fool and they should not be driving, and because they think they are causing congestion, where we don't realize that we ourselves are part of the problem. And I think this is really the biggest dilemma, in that sense, where we, if Professor Ashraf would look at it from a game theory perspective, that would be a very interesting observation, where we we are so selfish. We're just trying to win for our perspective. We forget the need of the collective, and that's the real. They are now changing the face of urban transport. There are completely new ways of looking at travel. If you go to many of these European cities, which are very tourist-friendly cities, very economically active cities, they have completely transformed. London, in last 10 years, in London, since they introduced congestion charging, and they have started to take out road space and give it for cycling. Now, 20% of the daily trips in the central London are actually made on bicycles, and public transport, of course, is fantastic in London. Uh, and the number of car usage has gone down by almost 30 to 35%. Now, this has really changed the complete landscape of London, the downtown London, which used to be a congested area. Today, it's a walkable area, it's a bicycleable area, and it's a lot of public transport is available. And because of these reasons, there is a resurgence of public transport all over the world. Now, Calcutta has two choices. We can go down the existing trend and we can keep adding more cars to the system. Let's kill the tram, let's remove it. And what is going to happen? In 10 years or 5 years down the line, it is going to be chock-a-block and people will be looking at solutions. Nobody will be able to move. So for our personal selfishness, we will have a collective problem which we will not be able to solve. And then the only way to find the solution would be that, oh, now we need to restrict, we need to introduce congestion charging like New York has done recently. And we have to do a lot of those things to create space for public transport so a lot of people can move in the limited urban space. And this cycle has been repeated over and over again in all over the world. There were some interesting discussions about metro. Now, let me just, and I am a metro man. I used to operate metros in Hong Kong too. So, and what I can tell you is that there are two different things. They're both needed for the city. They're not substitution. There is not one does not substitute the other. They work together. They complement each other. Trams are fantastic for short distance journeys. If you are going to 3 to 6 kilometers journeys, trams are fantastic because it's at grade. You just move in, you get into a train, even if it's not that fast, it takes you to your destination and you come out and you walk to your destination. Metros require you to go through various levels. You have to at least spend 3-4 minutes just reaching the train. And then you have to spend 3-4 minutes at least to come out of the train. So they are good. If your journeys are more than 6, 7, 10 kilometers, then metros are fantastic. They give you that edge. So if we start planning our cities in terms of this multimodal infrastructure, I think all of these public transport modes have a space in that urban fabric, which then if you weave it properly together, they create a beautiful landscape. And that's how cities should be defined. Best cities in the world today are not defined by how rich they are or how good the cars are in that city or how much parking spaces they provide in the city. I can tell you the best cities in the world, and I can go on and on this, that you look at all the top 10 cities in the world, they all are characterized by one fact: they have good public transport system. Calcutta is very fortunate to have this tram system in place. I think the people 150 years ago, they were visionaries. They created this system. And I think the least we can do as generations after this, as a responsible citizens, is to preserve what has been done, not to destroy it. And I think that is the whole aim here. Preserve not just for heritage. Heritage is obviously another aspect of completely looking at it. Most of the people look at heritage and they look at it as a showpiece. I am not talking about that part of TRAM. I'm talking about mobility. If we want to create cities which moves people and does not move those tin boxes, which are private cars, then we have to go for public transport. Cities should be designed for moving people, not moving vehicles. And trams fit perfectly into that landscape. When it comes to financing and funding part of it, and of course, Professor Ashra has given great examples, and I think those are really something that should be looked at in the context of Indian market. But I can tell you from my experience of running profitable public transport in last 35 years, is that if you look at Calcutta Tram, all the ingredients are there. If you create a good quality system, and if we can preserve what is already there, and if we can monetize what infrastructure that is already in place, the Calcutta trams can break even, in my opinion. There should not be a basket case. They should not rely on state support or exchequer or subsidy or whatever you want to call it. In Hong Kong, if you look at urban densities which are very high and road space which are very narrow, all the public transport systems, including trams, are actually profitable. And there is no reason why Calcutta cannot emulate the similar experience, and that's walking. It's good for the public transport system. It makes them more viable and profitable. And I think that is something that we need to pursue in Calcutta. I know time is short, so I won't dwell on further on this one, but I'll be happy to discuss if anybody has any more questions on this. So thank you very much for making me part of this panel. I'm delighted and honored to be here.
Thank you, Mr. Jain. Thank you. Thank you for these wonderful words and your suggestions and the solutions that you're trying to provide. We are looking at solutions. We've looked at history, we've looked at the present, and now we are looking at the future, which has solutions in place. And the next generation will be ready to use the trams as we did when we were young. And we are talking of cars now at our age. But when we were young, we didn't think of cars. We thought of trams, we thought of buses, we thought of metros, but cars came much later in the day. So let's pass on this wonderful heritage in a more relevant manner to the generations which come up now. I'm afraid we missed Yashu. He represents the present generation, but for some technical reasons with his video, he couldn't join. He sent me a message that he will be happy to join all of us in a second round of this panel discussion if we have one. I do really look forward to it. And I thank all of you very much for sparing your very, very valuable time for this special panel discussion on TRAM Twin Cities, Melbourne and Kolkata unite to make trams more relevant. Thank you, and a special thanks to our technical team for bearing with us for all this while and putting us in the spotlight, putting us in gallery view, and various ways they could make it dramatic. Thank you so much, Boishaki and Shumati. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.